The Academy's curriculum began with a single brutal truth: arrogance was a thief of oxygen. It pushed cadets to speak when silence meant survival, to argue when observation was required, and to assume when measurement alone could save lives. Commandant Vera adored this maxim. She delivered it with the calm authority of someone who had witnessed enough failures to predict the next casualty with unsettling accuracy. Standing beneath the harsh lights of Hall 7, silver threading in her uniform catching every reflection, she lectured rows of disciplined cadets on extreme environment certification. Yet this was no routine briefing. The presence of senior officers, the rigid stillness of the room, and the suffocating silence suggested something closer to a public execution of character. At a lower table sat Elia Rook, isolated from both cadets and command staff. He was neither soldier nor instructor, but a treaty oversight officer, an auditor whose job was to watch institutions that despised being watched. His last memo had accused the Academy not of cruelty, but of pattern blindness. That accusation had wounded pride far more deeply than any charge of malice. When Vera finished her sermon and opened the floor, tension tightened across the hall. It is a familiar human failing to fear disruption of authority more than the damage authority can cause. Unmoved by intimidation, Elia raised his hand. Senior Field Instructor Corin, a man whose posture radiated aggression, smirked in anticipation. But Elia ignored the theatrics. He asked a single, devastating question: when had Naraka 9 last been recertified? The air seemed to crystallize. Naraka 9 was legendary, a Class 9 Deathworld whispered about in barracks like a curse. To question its lethality was to challenge the Academy's identity. Vera replied with icy control, insisting the classification was historical and absolute. Elia countered with bureaucracy's blunt logic. Historical designations required validation. Tradition was not telemetry. Survival is data, Elia said calmly. If training normalizes preventable deaths as rigor, then loss is being confused with strength. Vera descended from the podium, crowding his space, accusing him of arrogance. Elia showed open palms, refusing the provocation. Confidence, he replied, required evidence. Arrogance required applause. Vera revealed her final weapon, a holographic map of Naraka 9 pulsing red with hazard warnings. She challenged him to validate his claims personally, alone, unsupported, with only a standard survival kit. Elia accepted. Not as a trap, but as a contract, preparation exposed the rot beneath the Academy's polished exterior. The mission packet Elia received was thick with heroic language and thin on usable data. When he requested raw telemetry and incident logs, the responses were evasive apologies followed by silence. Emergency lockers held expired sealants and recalled batteries, evidence that the greatest danger was not the planet, but unchecked institutional confidence. Elia documented everything with clinical precision. He was not going to Naraka 9 to be a hero. He was going to be a witness. The descent was anticlimactic. Gravity was heavy but manageable, contradicting the Academy's dire projections. The atmosphere was metallic and sharp, not instantly lethal. As Elia stepped onto the basalt plain, a fine whispering rain began to fall. It was not the acid deluge promised by the visuals, but a stinging drizzle arriving off schedule. The sky, it seemed, had not read the Academy's paperwork. Contradictions multiplied. A six-legged apex predator emerged from the rocks, not charging as predicted, but circling with curiosity. It reacted to micro-movements, assessed risk, and eventually withdrew. Elia logged the encounter. Behavior inconsistent with territorial aggression models. Naraka 9 was not mindless violence. It was nuance. As the cycle progressed, deeper flaws revealed themselves. Seismic tremors rippled through the ground, unlisted in hazard maps. Equipment lagged, not because the environment was impossible, but because the gear was aging and poorly maintained. An electromagnetic storm disrupted his beacon, dropping the signal below safety thresholds. The mission packet called such storms rare. Elia's scanner recorded them as rhythmic. The realization settled with chilling clarity. Cadets were not dying because Naraka 9 was a monster. They were dying because their maps were wrong. The Academy had stopped listening to the planet, preferring the comfort of legend over inconvenient data. Elia adapted. He built shelter that moved with the wind instead of resisting it. He tracked thermal gradients and discovered fauna traveling along invisible heat corridors. The monsters were commuters, not hunters. When corrosive storms struck, reacting violently with certain mineral deposits, Elia identified the pattern. Danger emerged where wind, chemistry, magnetism, and terrain converged. Not chaos, systems. Naraka 9 was not a death world. It was a misunderstood one. The ultimate revelation came with sound. A deep, resonant roar rolled across the landscape, reorganizing the ecosystem in its wake. The Academy taught cadets to hunt and kill this keystone predator, labeling it the apex threat. Elia observed instead. The creature's movements reshaped migration, stabilized territory, and reduced chaos. It was not the problem. It was the conductor. Remove it, and the system collapsed. Respect it, and order emerged. Elia compiled his audit from within the storm itself, stripping legend from reality and leaving only mathematics. He transmitted data in bursts synchronized to the planet's seismic rhythm, listening to the world in order to speak to the sky. When a massive fracture event sheared the plateau, his flexible shelter bent and survived where rigid doctrine would have failed. He endured not by conquering Naraka 9, but by yielding to it. Extraction was swift and unceremonious. The pilot regarded him not as a survivor of hell, but as a man finishing a shift. Elia left the planet knowing the truth: Naraka 9 was indifferent. It was the paperwork that had been lethal. The debriefing at the Academy was charged with fury. Vera and Korin expected a broken man. Instead, Elia presented a data slate detailing negligence, unrecorded tremors, ignored telemetry, systemic decay. When Vera accused him of exceeding his mandate, Elia answered calmly. The mandate was accuracy. Korin attempted mockery. Elia silenced him with a glance. Outcomes follow inputs. Your inputs were wrong. The verdict was immediate. Live training was suspended. Naraka 9 was ordered for reclassification. The legend died, replaced by a warning label that was boring, complex, and true. In the quiet aftermath, Vera confronted Elia in the corridor, exhaustion etched into her expression. She accused him of nearly destroying the Academy. Elia's reply was simple and final. Institutions that cannot survive correction do not deserve protection. The closure packet was filed without ceremony. Naraka 9 was officially redesignated as a high-risk adaptive environment requiring dynamic protocols. The myth was gone. In its place stood complexity, humility, and accountability. Elia walked out of the Academy unnoticed, just another auditor moving on to the next file. He had demonstrated what the institution had refused to teach. That humility is not forged through fear, but through listening. In an indifferent universe of ecosystems and systems within systems, the most dangerous predator is never the beast lurking in the dark. It is the lie left unchallenged.